it is in everyone's to startup and early stage businesses to succeed here in Tanzania. While it is unclear how long the pandemic will drag on and what the new normal will be for small businesses in Tanzania, undoubtedly, the WBAF is the type of bridge that will end the gulf that has long existed between Tanzanians with innovative ideas and investment opportunities that would effectively open up the limitless opportunities available in the broader world. Angel investment will ensure job creation for youths, improve the economic fortunes of individuals and communities, and in the long run, facilitate small-scale industrialization once great ideas begin to be transformed into production. As the first chair of the Tanzanian Angel Investors Week, I'm reminded of why the WBAF and indeed this event are so important to me. Being a founder of 2 startups myself, I have firsthand experience of the challenges faced by countless Tanzanian startups in the pursuit of seed capital and how having access to smart finance and angel investment can make a huge difference in the realization of an innovative idea. The late Dr. Sabetha Mwambenja, the founding country director, who was an angel investor herself, and who appreciated the potential for economic growth and sustainable livelihoods of communities through angel investments. Today, we host the event in honor of her for devoting her life to empowering women and young entrepreneurs through her financial prowess and her tireless belief that nothing is impossible, and for dedicating her life for the betterment of women and young entrepreneurs. She carried out her entrepreneurial and leadership savvy with great deal of humility in her lifelong quest and commitment to serve the women and youth of Tanzania and the world. As a result, I am proud and excited of what we have prepared for you today. We have 2 world-class keynote speakers who will offer practical, relevant, and critical analysis on how to leverage angel investments as a tool to boost economies. We also have industry experts who will drill down on the ideal policy environment for growing an investment ecosystem and canvas effective ways for startups and SMEs to attract investors. Once again, my deepest gratitude to all of you for dialing in. Feel free to practice with your videos on hold, but please keep your microphones muted to avoid disruption. If you have questions for the keynote speakers or panelists, please feel free to type them into the chat towards the end of your relevant session. Now, to get started, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Bebas Altuntas, Executive Chairman of the World Business Investment Forum, to deliver greetings from the Global Office. Thank you for listening. Kindly please bear with us as we wait to dial in our executive chairman. Once again, I would just like to remind you that at the end of both panel sessions and the keynotes, we welcome you to have questions for the speakers. So please listen attentively on the speeches being given by the keynote speakers and the panel discussions so that you can take advantage of these opportunities to have these industry experts and ask them the questions that you've always been dying to ask about angel investment, entrepreneurship, startups, and smart financing.
Dear moderators, dear speakers of roundtables, dear participants. Welcome to the World Business Angel Investors Week, and welcome to the Angel Investors Flagship events in the world. World Business Angel Investors Week is a great platform where all stakeholders come together to assess their fast-paced journey, to analyze why and how we should leverage investment as a must-have financial tool for boosting economics. We are going to retreat of entrepreneurial ecosystems and create more jobs, more wealth, and more social justice in cooperation with key players of early stage agreements. During the World Business Angel Investors Week, we are going to create unique opportunity to showcase fresh and innovative ideas that inspire current and future leaders of the world to take risks on new ideas, collaborate across sectors, and transform world economies through the scaling and entrepreneurship, angel investment, financial inclusion, and innovation. This week-long event is an open platform for connecting, learning, sharing, and exchanging know-how that promotes entrepreneurship and angel investment ecosystems. This is a great platform from which to campaign for solutions to critical issues of early stage equity and capital markets and other worldwide concerns at the United Nations, the European Union, and G20 countries level. As an affiliated partner of the G20 Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, GPFI, the World Business Angel Investors Investment Forum is proud of organizing all events of the week globally. We are going to have 156 keynote speakers, 138 roundtables, with 325 speakers from 128 countries until next Sunday. 72 countries are celebrating this week until next Sunday. And I'm sure all participants from Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, Latin America and the Caribbean, and MENA region will find a rewarding experience by joining and following the events until the end of this week. I want to thank so much to all country chairs and continental chairs for their efforts to make all this happen. I want to highlight an important detail of this week. The detail is this week is now celebrated under one global topic: international diplomacy and business diplomacy for international entrepreneurship. Why we wanted to come together under this global topic this year? Mr. COVID alerted
all entrepreneurial ecosystem about the importance of business diplomacy for startups, scale-ups, and entrepreneurs and SMEs. We are inviting all governments to consider including more financial support in their recovery plans against COVID-19 for entrepreneurs and for SMEs and for startups. Because entrepreneurs of today need more support to be ready for post-pandemic times. Why? Because they are suffering. They are suffering financially. And governments should start immediately considering the importance of financial support for startups because they are creating new jobs, they are creating new wealth, and they are contributing to social justice. So the WBAF board decided to invite all stakeholders under this global theme and invite all policymakers to take this important issue into consideration. Without financial support, entrepreneurs will not be able to transform their businesses digitally. Business transformation and digital transformation are two key words for entrepreneurs of today. If they cannot succeed, if they cannot achieve transforming their businesses digitally, they are going to suffer more in the future, which means governments will suffer too, because these entrepreneurs will not be able to create more jobs in post-pandemic times. We are going to host 80,000 participants this year from almost all continents, and it is a great pleasure for me to see all global stakeholders of the WBIF came together to really support entrepreneurs and startups. All events this year and always will be free for everybody who want to join our global efforts in this week. I am sure you are going to find a rewarding experience by joining this week's events. And special thanks are going to all country chairs and continental chairs who made all these things happen. Thank you very much and enjoy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bebas Altentus, our Executive Chairman of the WBAF Forum. As he said, please feel free to log in into Angels Week. The week is continuing. This week it's Africa Week. The topics being discussed are exciting. So please let us learn from other countries on what they're doing on the investment journey, the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Moving forward, I am very excited to start off our first keynote speaker, Honorable Angela Kairuki. She's a former cabinet minister. In the Prime Minister's office, she was in charge of investment. Her experience in investment is very vital on the topic we are discussing today. And not only that, she has experience in law and policy creation. So that is very exciting to hear from her concerning what she has in mind on how we can leverage angel investment as a tool to boost economies. Honorable Angela Kairuki, welcome to Angels Week, Tanzania.
this keynote address. I am pleased to have this opportunity to share my 50 cents on the vital subject matter on how to leverage angel investment as a tool for boosting economic development. Ladies and gentlemen, it goes without saying that the foundation of a modern economy is led on entrepreneurial ventures which have entirely revolutionized the economic development of this world drastically. The significance of small businesses is unquestionable as they create millions of jobs each year. However, nurturing these entrepreneurial ventures through investment is essential to make them resilient in the early stages. Angel investors are the only people who are willing to listen to an early stage entrepreneur's business pitch, to offer advice, but also to invest the cash that is needed to turn an idea into a thriving business. And this is why I am very grateful for the opportunity to share some of my ideas with people who will be more affected by what World Business Angels Forum is doing. Business ventures like Google, Facebook, Yahoo, Amazon, Starbucks are some of the titans of the world's corporate sector, which angel investors back them at the early stage of their development. The statistics of angel investments show a significant shift in the last decade, whereby compared to $9.7 billion in 2013, the angel investment in startup businesses has increased by 160%, as the total angel investments in 2020 were $25.3 billion US dollars. A total of 64,480 entrepreneurial ventures received angel funding, which is an increase of 57% over 2013 investments, with 28,000 entrepreneurial ventures receiving angel funding. According to a survey, each angel investment produces 3.9 jobs. Therefore, leveraging the angel investment in the developing countries will not be restricted to the corporate sector. It will also economic development, and enacting legislation to encourage it. Some have formed countrywide networks like USA, UK, and France. The aim is to aid in establishing angel groups, connecting angel groups to exchange best practices, but also to help groups invest in firms that require more capital than a single group can provide. An example of India, angel investors having a minimum net worth of Indian rupees 2 crores in the preceding 3 financial years will be eligible for 100% tax exemption on investments in startups beyond the fair market value. Similarly, in the USA, angel investors are usually qualified for an income tax exemption that are provided through Section 5627D of the Internal Revenue Code. And through this provision, it implies they'll only have to pay taxes on the amount by which the total cash collected from the startup stock issuance exceeds the fair market value. For the side of China, they also provide a 70% tax exemption to angel investors for leveraging these networks, but also gaining sustainable economic development. Over the past 2 decades, the economic development boost in these countries shows the positive influence of government policies in leveraging angel investment. Countries like China, as I previously mentioned, which have enormous potential, both financial and social, can use angel investment as a business tool to boost the economic development by providing tax relief, by providing interest rate policies and other financial assistance. We therefore should swiftly and widely progress by taking decisive actions to create the entrepreneurial ecosystem for growing the number of large-scale businesses of the future, to make Tanzania a modern and ecosystem business-centric economy with significant development. When Tanzania is taken into account, compared with major developing countries, the initial analysis reveals that Tanzania lags in embracing angel investment. I can see this presenting both an opportunity but also a challenge. It can be an opportunity to borrow lessons from peers or regulatory reforms that are needed to create an environment that is conducive to startup growth that can attract angel investment. It can also be a challenge if we lag for so long and we have a risk of being outsmarted in the race to attract angel investment in the country. SME sector in Tanzania can fully exploit the opportunity to attract angel investors by establishing a Tanzanian specialized entrepreneurial council which can effectively coordinate between the organizations and the angel investors. The said Entrepreneurs Council should also provide a dragon's den, or do you have an idea, related programs to encourage startups to design business ideas attractive and presentable for angel investors. Given that the most common difficulty that entrepreneurs face in Tanzania is a lack of initial capital, the motivation for participating in these programs will become more apparent. As a culture that watches too much television, the quantity of these types of shows may be expanded to more quickly and readily spread the angel investment model to young people. To therefore summarize, angel investment firms in Tanzania, as into all other developing countries, will play the role of angel when they effectively evaluate business ideas presented to them and generate profits for both the owner of the concept but also the firm that is investing. If, on the other hand, the owner of a high-profit business idea is not given a profit that is proportional to the idea's value, and the angel investment firm acts on the logic of only I'll earn, it may be the devil. This flies in the face of angel investment's fundamental reason. So, for leveraging the angel investment as a business tool for economic development, logical profit sharing must be therefore considered between the business idea and angel investor. I hope I've given you a sense of the changes that will influence the angel investor ecosystem in the coming years, the changes that might affect how you discover your next significant investment, who your following investment partners are, or the source of offerings you are contemplating. The issuers, angels, and staff may need to think in new ways due to these changes. Although there may be some variations in viewpoints, I believe we all have the same aim of assisting businesses in obtaining the money they require, but also protecting investors. I thank you for your time and consideration, and I thank you for listening, and I thank you for the fantastic opportunity given for me to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Angela Kairuki, for that intense keynote speech. I'm already learning a lot about the angel investment markets around the world. I am very much excited on what she said about tax incentives that are offered to angel investors and on equal profit sharing on when you get an angel investor. Moving on, I am equally excited to introduce our next keynote speaker, Ms. Neema Siwingwa. Neema Siwingwa is a development finance specialist with over 20 years of experience 16 which are in banking and Africa financial markets. Neema is passionate about economic development in Africa and very keen on more private investment, including commercial financing to spur this economic growth. Ms. Siwingwa is currently working in the syndications and co-financing division at the African Development Bank, which as of this year, February, is a partner of the WBAF. She works as part of a team to facilitate the mobilization of financing for the bank's borrowing clients. Ms. Siwingwa is a third culture Tanzanian national, having lived in 7 countries on 3 continents. She enjoys traveling, reading, photography, and the outdoors. Kindly welcome Ms. Neema Siwingwa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair of today's session, Ms. Tuti Mombenja. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you're dialing in today. Entrepreneurship interests a lot of people. Many people want to try their hand at starting a business with the prospect of either getting a steady second income stream, building up for a future post-employment. Some are also ambitious enough to want to start a business so that it may transform their lives financially, meaning giving up their day jobs to pursue this 100%. How many of you here today have considered becoming entrepreneurs? You've come up with a business idea which you thought could give you that second income, or potentially even launch your proposed retirement plan or retirement fund. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because I'm sure quite a number of you have actually considered this. It's something that plays on the minds of many people within our economy in Tanzania, for example, and I think more widely within the East African context. But I must caution you, entrepreneurship is not easy. There are numerous challenges to running a successful business. Distinguished members of the investment world, guests of the World Business Angel Forum, thank you for coming here today and taking part in this session whereby we'll be able to dissect a little bit more around the concept of angel investing. My keynote will focus mainly on what exactly it is that an angel investor does, how they work with their identified target investment, and what it is that the target investee can actually benefit out of this relationship. The reason why I thought I'd focus on this, because it's always good to start with the basics. Let everybody be on the same page as we discuss, and I'm sure the panels will go into greater detail around the challenges, not only at the investee level, but also at the macro or ecosystem level. As I was saying before, many entrepreneurs have brilliant business ideas. They may even have put away money to start this business, but then they soon realize that they need more capital to shore up their investment and for their business idea to fully take off. In today's world, to be honest, there is so much in terms of financing. So the issue and the challenge is that there is no funding. The issue and the challenge is that there are not many great business opportunities. So it's not always easy for entrepreneurs to access finance. Some of the reasons that are regularly cited for this include an insufficient business track record, lack of sufficient collateral in terms of when it comes to borrowing, or insufficient capital, and that's the seed funding that you put in to start your business. Often we see businesses struggle from year to year with little or no growth, and some eventually die out. The main challenge is always around the F word, financing. So Like I mentioned earlier, the focus of this keynote is more around, the various types of financing which could potentially facilitate the startup of a business, especially one with a high degree of innovation and great growth potential. The lifeline of many of these startups, and especially you tend to find this more often in the Western world, come in the form of an angel investor. According to Investopedia, an angel investor is a high net worth individual who provides financial backing for startups or entrepreneurs, typically in exchange for ownership, equity, so a stake in the company. Often, angel investors are found amongst an entrepreneur's family or circle of friends, or within his small, wider network. So it's somebody who knows this person, or rather knows the business person. The funds that angel investors provide may be a one-time investment to help the business get off the ground, or it could be an ongoing injection of funding to support and carry the business through the difficult early stages. For those of you who have actually started businesses or have endeavored to run a business in the past, you are very much familiar with this whole concept of the requirement of additional injection of capital as your business grows. Angels are usually seasoned business people with a good understanding of risk that any business faces. Therefore, their investment strategy has to be extremely targeted. They will not invest more than 10% of their own assets into these ventures. They try and minimize, their overall investment to not more than 10%. They also, given the riskiness of investee companies, they also tend to have fairly high return requirements, and within a certain, or rather a short period of time, typically around 5 years. Although their financing is key to the investees, they can do more for these businesses. And so they're known for playing the role of business mentor, providing guidance and advice on how to penetrate specific markets. They also share their own business experiences and facilitate networking for these investee companies. They may sound like a good deal for the investee company, but as I mentioned before, high risk requires high returns. According to an article that I read around angel investing and what it is that angel investors tend to look for, there were 4 key things that were identified. So one is a good reason for them to invest. Some do it because they're hedonistic. They're looking for an exciting new venture to invest in or something to preoccupy their minds. Others are more altruistic. So they genuinely want to help somebody within their own network or within their community. Others just want to make money. So the second reason why angel investors do what they do is because they've identified an investee that has solid management team, as well as a solid business plan. So as we come up with our investment ideas, it is really key and important for us to consider, what does our investment look like to somebody who could potentially want to finance it? Does my business plan make sense? Have I actually identified key obstacles and challenges that might impact my business? Have I considered the strengths and opportunities of my business proposition? And who am I working with to deliver this brilliant business idea? Third key reason why angel investors do select the investees that they do, they find an opportunity for them to be more actively involved. So for example, as I mentioned before, they act like business mentors. If they identify an investee company that is in a field that they're very familiar with, of course, they would love to put in all of their knowledge and expertise to try and support this business, because they get something out of it, they get a mentee out of the interaction. Finally, and this is linked to various other equity types of investments, and that's a viable exit strategy. A lot of equity investors, or rather all equity investors, would like to be able, especially if they didn't come up with the business idea, would like to be able to exit at some stage. Once they've made their returns, it's now time for them to, to reap what they've sowed and exit the venture, allowing for others to come in, or for the actual entrepreneur who started the business to be able to expand their ownership within the company. So in the Western world, and this is according to an article in Forbes on how angel investors and angel groups work, there is a report called the Halo Report, which tracks angel investments. And according to this particular report, the key sectors that have been a target for angel investors include the internet, not surprising, since that is a high growth and very innovative sector, healthcare, mobile and telecommunications, again, due to innovation, energy and utilities takes up about 4.3%, which is actually quite minimal, electronics, and finally, consumer products and services. So now you've piqued the interest of an angel investor and you're considering, should I or should I not? Let's think about what are some of the things that angel investors can actually gain from working with, let's now consider what investee companies can actually gain from working with angel investors. Angel investors, as I mentioned before, given their mentorship angle and the fact that they can actually facilitate networking and opportunities for you to be able to expand your business, they provide valuable advice that you will not be able to just get from, one of your co-workers or one of your co-founders. They come in with a world of experience and network. And quite frankly, when you are trying to build up a business, it's always important to understand what the potential pitfalls could be and what you could gain from networking with others who might not necessarily be within your sector, but who can provide an ancillary support to your business. Angel investors also allow for the investees to raise money through fewer investors and contacts. Because of their whole networking contribution, they would know of other investors who are keen on investing in a similar sector or business startup. Normally, when you have to approach an angel investor, they're not going to give you the same kind of conditions that a bank would. This person understands the business quite well, or rather understands the sector, so they probably would be providing the funding based on gut, as opposed to a long list of regimented rules as to why you would qualify or why you might not. So there are fewer restrictions, and also they tend to be a little bit more flexible, even in terms of how they provide their financing. And if you actually do perform, guess what? They may consider continuing to support you. So those are some of the key reasons or some of the key benefits that an investee company can get from working with an angel. Before I wrap up, I would just like us to consider a couple of things. So clearly, as a startup, financing is not always available to you. And if you're trying to get funding on a more flexible term, funding that will allow your business to be able to grow, not just through financing, but also through network and through valuable business advice, then obviously it's really key to start considering angel investing or contacting angel investors. But in order for this to happen, that kind of culture has to be nurtured within our economy. So we need to create a culture that nurtures angel investments. I recently came across an article about about a Tanzanian entrepreneur who decided on his 55th birthday to invest 550 million Tanzanian shillings in 55 entrepreneurs. This is the CEO of Clouds. And I think this kind of activity is really key. You know, the Tanzanian economy has transitioned in the last 15 years, and we're now seeing an emerging entrepreneurial class. You know, there are more and more successful business people. I think that it's important and it's quite key that these business people don't hoard their business acumen, experience, or network. They should find opportunities to be able to engage with the slowly emerging entrepreneurial sector. As the economy continues to emerge, this is an aspect where, you know, we obviously won't see an overnight overflow of angel investment, but the foundations must be laid. And a conducive environment for this type of investment should be created so that more entrepreneurs feel the urge to reach out to potential or budding entrepreneurs. Finally, to entrepreneurs, I'd like to challenge you to not only come up with interesting and exciting, innovative business ideas, but to make sure that you put in the right ingredients so that they're attractive to the broad spectrum of investors out there. Ensure that you put together a fairly solid management team. It doesn't have to be a big one, but it should be solid. Also, invest in putting together a business plan that will guide the direction of your personal investment in your business. I would also like to encourage small businesses to consider the use of professional services to ensure that your business propositions come across as plausible and credible. You know, learn how to manage your business. Don't reinvent the wheel. You know, there are plenty of books out there that do give us the nuts and bolts in terms of what it takes to start a business. Think about it. Would you choose to invest in a company that had no direction, lacked transparency in terms of its operations, and had weak corporate governance? I don't think so. When it comes to entrepreneurship, the saying of if you build it, they will come is extremely apt. Investors want to bet, for the lack of a better word, on a good horse. Be that good horse. Over to you, Chair of the session, Madam Tuti Mwambenja.
Thank you very much, Ms. Neema. Just to kick off your session of Q&A before you go, I have a question here, or I received a question, and the question is about how can a startup that does not have a strong management team, but have a good, solid, maybe business idea, how can they strengthen their management team? Because I've come to understand that angel investors also invest in the experience of the management team. But if I am a startup and I just have a co-founder that's equally having the same experience, how can I go around that?
I think in some cases, the intention of the entrepreneur is probably more valuable than the reality on the ground. So what you might find is somebody will start up a business and try and mask certain things like their actual or their real experience, what it is that they're capable of doing. In this case, you create confusion to people who are trying to invest in you because they will do their due diligence. And when they do their due diligence, they will be able to pick holes in your, proposition. In the case where both of you are fairly inexperienced, it does become a challenge. One thing that you might want to do is to enlist maybe the support of somebody who is seasoned, who might not necessarily require to be paid upfront for providing the guidance and support that your business requires. So this person could be supporting you pro bono, not financially, to make sure that you have some credibility in your business as you start up. So seek out, the idea would be to seek out people who have experience in doing what you're doing, making sure that within your network, you do have people that you can rely on in this aspect. And obviously, you know, it also depends on where you're trying to get your financing from. And it also depends on the complexity of your business. So if your business is fairly straightforward, I think years of experience might not be as challenging as if you were to start something that's fairly technical or highly innovative.
Thank you very much. Just to let the participants know, we are open to questions that you might have for our keynote speaker, Ms. Neema Siwingwa. Just the final question I've received, it concerns having a co-investor. For instance, as a startup, I have managed to attract an angel investor, let's say not from Tanzania, from abroad, but due to the risk of growing the market here in Tanzania, they require me to have a local investor. How can I go about finding a local investor that might co-invest with a foreign investor?
Yes, and that's one of the challenges that I sort of alluded to in my keynote, that this culture of co-investment is not, it's not very big in Tanzania. But I am noting that we're seeing more and more entities trying to provide seed money to budding entrepreneurs. For example, I note that Standard Bank subsidiary in Tanzania, Stanbic, you know, recently ran, or rather is running a series of contests to support entrepreneurs. So as you know, these types of things do help to shore up the initial funding and initial support. Again, network is important. You know, when you as you start up your enterprise, you need to look at what else is there available within your ecosystem. What other opportunities are similar to your own, or what other people do you know who actually work within this sector, or providing a similar, you know, business proposition. Sometimes it helps to utilize your network, not only to find somebody else who might be interested in investing with you, but also to, you know, to unlock financing. One thing I'd like to caution though, when you are like, don't be desperate in terms of trying to secure financing. Business ideas, if they are indeed solid, you know, they sell themselves. As I mentioned earlier, you know, if you have a solid business plan, you are, you know, you are likely, highly likely to be able to get the kind of financing that you require. Make sure that your business plan is solid. Make sure that you thought through, you know, the things that could potentially challenge or tank your business, because people would like to know this. Nobody asks you up front, but when they come with their due diligence, guess what? They will be poking holes to make sure that when they put money in, it's not going into a black hole. That's the whole purpose. I mean, anybody who invests, be it equity, be it a loan, will do their homework to make sure that you know exactly what it is you're talking about. So make sure you know what it is that you're talking about. Understand your sector, understand your business. And if you don't, you can always rely on somebody within your network. Do a little bit of research to find out more about others who have gone before you, because they can provide valuable experience or valuable information. Even if you can't find them locally, I'm sure that there are stories of similar cases even within the region. Kenya is a market which, you know, where we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurial action. Don't be afraid to learn from the Kenyan experience. I know that our economies are not the same, but you know, how different can a tech business be in Kenya vis-a-vis a tech business in Tanzania?
Thank you very much, Ms. Neema, for your time and for such great insight on angel investment. You have really kicked off the session for our next session of the discussion. Thank you very much. I would like to introduce our moderator for the next panel discussion, Ms. Emilia Siwingwa. Emilia Siwingwa is an advocate of the High Court of Tanzania and a registered arbitrator with 18 years industry experience. She's the principal of an eponymous legal advisory firm that develops bespoke installation, market entry, and impact strategies, and provides high-level legal advisory services. She's also the founder of the African Hub for Accountability and Development Initiatives, AHADI, which one co-creates sustainable development solution and strengthens people-led accountability across the continent. An American Bar Foundation Fellow and an Archbishop Desmond Tutu Leadership Fellow. I'm pleased to hand the meeting over to Emilia Siwingwa.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. From wherever it is that you're dialing from, it is an honor to be here with you this evening. Our first panel is titled, "What is the ideal policy environment for growing an investment ecosystem?" Ladies and gentlemen, the times, they are a-changing. Inventions are no longer the focus for economic development of societies. In the 21st century, it is innovation that counts. And entrepreneurs now need to have a complex set of skills to move their innovative ideas into the market and to ensure that they succeed. They also need smart finance, which the World Business Angel Investment Forum, or the WBAF, deems to be the only true source of smart finance. But this is a new source of financing in the Tanzanian investment ecosystem. And it is unique in that it goes beyond just financing. It looks at mentorship, knowledge addition, and networks. So what is the ideal environment for the entrepreneur? And what is the ideal environment for the angel investor? Do we need angel investment legislation? Do we need tax incentives? Do we need to set up an angel investment system? Our industry experts will spotlight the status quo within the country, the needed reforms, and who the key actors are. So let's meet our panelists, starting with Andrew Mahiga, Director of Policy Research, Advocacy, and Lobbying at the Tanzania Private Sector Forum. Andrew, welcome. Please unmute for 20 seconds or so. Please talk to us about what it is that you do at the TPSF. Over to you.
Thank you, Emilia. I hope you can hear me clearly. Good evening from Arusha, Tanzania. Thank you for having me. Thank you for organizing this forum. So yes, as you mentioned, I'm the Director of Policy Research and Advocacy and Lobbying at the Tanzania Private Sector Foundation. So my role is twofold. We are a membership-based private sector apex body. So we do lobby and advocate for private sector issues, lobby to the government, lobby to relevant ministries, lobby to parliament, whether it's tax related, whether it's fiscal, whether it's business environment issues. We are that voice for them to put forward their recommendations and issues. But also we're a platform for the government to dialogue with the private sector as well. Whether it's a new strategy or policy or project that is related to private sector that the government wants to implement, they would go through TPSF to engage with various stakeholders in the private sector, whether it's sector specific or whether it's talking to CEOs and managing directors So we also that vehicle for government to speak to private sector as well. And in a nutshell, I'm that middleman that gets all those things done.
Thank you. An important person indeed. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Dr. Joseana Lunogelo, who is the Principal Associate Researcher and Policy Analyst at the Economic and Social Research Foundation. Welcome, Dr. Joseana. Over to you to tell us a little bit about what it is that you do over at ESRF. Andrew, please stay on.
Yes, ESRF actually is among the oldest think tanks in Africa. It started in the 90s. It specializes in advising the government, the private sector on policy issues. Has been responsible actually for most of the policies you see, you in the experience, the good and the bad in Tanzania, I would say. But then has also been given a responsibility at one point to review those policies if they're not going well. Personally, I was the executive director for ESRF for 8 years. So I've had that experience also of working with other think tanks in SADC and the East community. But within the country, I think one of the most recent move by the government has been actually to ensure that all the regions prepare what they call the regional investment guides, which actually identifies some of the opportunities for investors, some of the things which they can do for the youth, for example. And they personally have been involved in preparing 8 guides for 8 regions. So that's what I do now. Of course, I'm retired but not tired because I'm approaching 70 now. But I think policy work is so exciting. I still feel myself very young because most of the things which I studied at university are unfulfilled. So I still reserve some energy to ensure that it's done before my years are done. So, okay.
It's wonderful to have you here with us. I look forward to hearing about some of those guidelines that you have produced so that we get a better understanding of the enabling environment for angel investments in Tanzania. Please also stay with your video on. We are now building up to the panel itself. So Dr. Joseana, please do come back on screen. Our final panelist will be Dale Sabo Kwigina, who is the director of Kyoto Hub and director at the University of Iringa's Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Welcome and tell us briefly about your portfolio.
Thank you very much, Emilia. As I said, I'm Dale Sabo Kwigina. At Kyoto Hub and the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, we are more or less on the promotion of startup. We are at the bottom of the pyramid. We are at the level of nurturing mindset, nurturing business idea, mindset transformation, facilitating networking and local creation. But after our level, we link our graduates, the startup that graduate from our hubs do get linked to incubators, at cost tech level and so forth. So that's mostly what we do.
Wonderful. We have about 40 minutes to canvass a few issues to better understand the investment environment and how to grow it in Tanzania. We're going to span a series of questions. I see questions are already coming in from our audience, and I would encourage the audience to just type your question into the chat. We will have a Q&A session following the 40 minutes for about 10 minutes or so before we move on to the next panel. So panelists, once again, welcome. Let's get some context. We have people who have dialed in with varying knowledge and understanding of angel investment. What do we mean when we speak about an investment ecosystem? And I want to start with Dr. Joseana, because clearly through your guidelines, you must have developed some definitions. What is the definition of an investment ecosystem?
First of all, because you are looking at two levels of investors. You are looking at international investors, but also local investors. I think within as a country for foreign investors, and that's why we're talking angels who are based out there who want to come and invest in Tanzania. We have already policies and regulations. Tanzania actually has adopted the World Trade Organization's trade-related investment measures with TRIMS, which encourages investment in line with our priorities. But as part of that, we ensure that whoever invests in the country can repatriate profits. When you invest, that you also have actually the right to a minimum number of experts, foreign experts, to be hired as part of the company or the investment you set up. I think last week I heard the minister responsible for investment saying that they wanted to review that to increase actually the minimum number of foreign experts, and also they tried to make sure that the bureaucracy involved in giving work permits is reduced. Things comes easier. It will be easier for now, more predictable and known in terms of that. Instead of having 2-year work permits, I think they're talking about 7 years minimum, so that you don't have every after 2 years asking for work permits. But I think in terms of the local within the local ecosystem, first of all, you have of course we've taken time to materialize that. Each region, each district actually is supposed to create special economic zones. Special economic zones are special areas whereby you have easy access of key facilities, key services, infrastructure services needed for investments. Because if you're starting an industry sector, for example, you need the water, you need the roads, you need the electricity. So each region is supposed to be that. And the investment guys I was talking about, they have tried to earmark areas where you can and also expand the concept of economic zones or special economic zones. For many years, we have been just talking about industrial parks, for example, but now we are even talking about agricultural parks that you can have actually a place, and that's ideal for you for rural youth or young people from towns who want to go and invest in agriculture. So an agricultural park, for example, will have a set of the place where if you put greenhouses or they call greenhouses, irrigation schemes, some irrigation systems, which is easier now. Youth can actually take a parcel, can rent some part of that investment instead of having, because the youth don't have enough money to buy large farms, but with the intensive agriculture systems, it means we have 2 acres, 1 acre, quarter acre even for high value crops, and you are doing drip irrigation. You're also doing smart agriculture, which includes, some people have never heard, I don't know, Emilia, have heard of hydroponic farming. This is a soil-free farming. You can grow spinach and tomatoes without the roots touching the soil. So and you have youth actually already doing that in Iringa and here in Dar es Salaam and Bagamoyo. So I think basically one of the simplified environment for Tanzania is also the corporate tax. The last 2 years ago, I think that it was reduced. I think still we have a challenge in terms of having well capitalized investment banks. I think all development banks, we don't have enough of that. We have Tanzania Investment Bank and Tanzania Agriculture Development Bank, but their capital base is not as strong compared to potential borrowers. I think that's why we need the angels, or investment angels.
Wow, that is a comprehensive response. You've taken us through a variety of things, including the fact that we actually do have a framework that allows for foreign investors to be in Tanzania. You've spoken about issues of repatriation. You've spoken about tax incentives. You've touched on that already. I love that you've also gone into industry specifics with respect to angel investments and how you departed on the issue of banks and capitalization. That's rather comprehensive. So you really have set the stage. So I want to move on a little bit, and I want to ask Andrew, from a private sector perspective, why are investors looking at the regulatory environment? Why do they care? Why is this an issue? And can you shed any insights in respect of the perspectives of local and foreign investors in Tanzania?
Thank you. To answer your first question, why do investors look at the regulatory environment? I would maybe answer it in two parts. One, a conducive regulatory environment, one, will attract investment. It will build investor confidence. And we know that business brings new business. Usually the person that brings in a new investment is usually someone who's invested there already. So it creates incentives, it creates stability, especially if a regulatory framework or environment is transparent, is consistent, and is predictable. It will attract investments. And then the second reason is also a good regulatory and legal framework will protect investments. It'll protect people's capital, assets, property, physical property, and intellectual property. So a good regulatory environment will tick those two big boxes as far as, you know, the decision to invest somewhere, and the confidence that your investment will be secure and safe. And can you please repeat your second question, sir?
Absolutely. So from your experience, what are the current thoughts or perspectives of local investors and foreign investors in Tanzania vis-a-vis the angel investment ecosystem?
Yes, and this is totally my opinion. But I think when we look at angel investments, I think it's still a relatively new concept in Tanzania, especially when it comes to local investors. You know, we would see local investors probably invest more in more established enterprises or companies, companies that may give them quicker returns, a more stable and a company that's probably been in the market for quite a while. When we look at angel investing, it's usually more of a foreign investor lens, and it's usually in, you know, probably tech or very technology-driven investments, which is not a bad thing, but I think there's definitely room to fill that gap where we have more local angel investors that sort of supplement, you know, what foreign angel investors are bringing in, and it does not have to necessarily be capital or cash or finance. I think there's a lot of ways to support startups to be an angel investor, whether it's providing technical support, whether it's providing spaces for these startups to grow and network and test their ideas out. So there's various ways that an investor can come in, but I think definitely there's a gap between local and foreign when it comes to, maybe again, it's just the understanding of what an angel investor is and what it means, and how local investors can participate. But there's definitely a gap in investment, probably caused by a gap in information as well.
Thank you, Andrew. That's a perfect segue into asking Deo, from an entrepreneur's perspective, please share your experience and insights into how entrepreneurs view the current ecosystem vis-a-vis angel investment.
Okay, thank you very much, Emilia. Again, maybe before I answer your question, going back to the ecosystem that we're talking about, as Dr. Hosiana Runogelo talked about, you understand that we have different actors in the ecosystem. So you have the demand side of it, like the entrepreneurs that you are asking a question on entrepreneurs. So we are on the demand side of it. And then we have also the supply side of investment, like these investors. We still have intermediaries, You still have enablers like I was talking about innovation hub and incubators, but you still also have the government, and the government becomes a very important part of these pillars of ecosystem, because it's a facilitator of it. It is an actor, or it's a participant, but it's also a regulator of the ecosystem. So if you are talking about catalyzing the innovation or the impact, the investment ecosystem, you are finding the government playing that role really of being a catalyzer, because it plays a different role. So as an entrepreneur, we are at the demand side. As innovation hubs and incubators, we are at the enabling side, yes, but the government can play all the roles. A facilitator, the normal participant, but also as a regulator. And before again coming back to my question you were asking, why should we really care? Why should we investors maybe care about the investment, the policy environment? Why should they care? Of course, we know because they are risk takers, yes, but though they are risk takers, they aren't, I don't know, mostly in entrepreneurship, we are using calculated risk takers. They aren't just going there blindly. They would like to, they take out loans, they finance investment, but they would like returns. So they want to be sure that their investments are safe for somewhat. And again, that's the part of entrepreneur, but also on the part of the regulation. They want to be sure that the laws are not really that much heavy taxes, whether there isn't too much bureaucracy, or whether the legal and the regulatory framework is not costly and cumbersome on their part. But on our part again, maybe they also want to make sure that there are no economic risks. They want to be asked to use, maybe there won't be any import restriction if there will be, there won't be any tax controls if there will be, there won't be any price controls if there will be. Maybe as again, Dr. Nogiro talked about, maybe when there will be in need of work permit, they are dealing with different regulatory bodies in a country, that there won't be such much cost and the cumbersome procedures.
And then, what are the entrepreneurs looking at?
Yes. So on the part of entrepreneurs, I have to say that, for instance, we are talking about the angel investor, but in Tanzania, as my friend Andrew said, it is really a relatively new concept in Tanzania. I have to say that entrepreneurs that I'm dealing with mostly have never been in contact with any angel investors. So it's a challenge. I understand that it's mostly graduation from normally what we are using grants. Nowadays we find that we are mostly relying on grants from the government, grants from international organization. You need to graduate from grants to that level of funding like angel investors. But then not only it's a new concept, but also the fact that are really entrepreneurs even aware of it? It's an issue.
Excellent. I love the fact that you have highlighted the point that this is new. And what I'm hearing is that while there seems to be an enabling environment for investments in general, perhaps what we're missing is specific frameworks that look at angel investments. And I want us to now consider what type of policies, laws, and other enabling frameworks might or should be introduced into the investment ecosystem to ensure that this is no longer novel as we move into the year 2022 and beyond. So let's look at what policy environment currently obtains in Tanzania. Dr. Lunogelo has touched on a few issues. He's touched on issues of taxes. He's touched on immigration considerations. Dale has also spoken about a variety of issues around risk. And I would love for us to get thinking and discussing around what do you feel, or what is your experience, even if it's still new or novel? From your experience, from your research, what is it that you understand in terms of the policies that currently exist, the laws that currently exist? And I would love for Andrew to speak about what you think is currently attractive for an angel investor and what you think might be the challenges for an angel investor.
Thank you, Millie. Those are really good questions. Let me start. What would be attractive? I think when we talk about angel investment, of course there is that return on your investment that everybody would like to see. But I think also there's two areas that maybe could be more attractive, especially in the context of a developing country like Tanzania. One is perhaps what type of impact is this thing that I'm going to be investing in going to make? And two, who are the people behind this idea or this potential new investment? I think the human resources or the human capital behind this investment, what are their skills, what are their capabilities, what are their long-term outcomes and goals? Because sometimes as startups, as small businesses, I think they do tend to focus a lot more on raising capital. How much money can I get from this? Because I need to get an office, I need to buy new laptops, so it's very, some of these entrepreneurs are very sort of finance driven, and they may be missing one of what type of skills am I bringing to the table? What type of impact does this, do I plan on making with this investment? Is it going to create jobs? Is it going to improve, is it a social enterprise? Is it going to improve people's quality of lives and so forth? I think that would be a very attractive thing, especially when a lot of entrepreneurs maybe are seeking angel investment in the same sort of sector, whether it's fintech, whether it's technology. There's a lot of competition of entrepreneurs seeking angel investors. So I think how to make yourself more attractive is to consider those two things: the human capital, what type of skills you're bringing, how is your team made up? I think earlier on, I think even Tuti had asked about that, about sometimes they want to see what type of team you have, but you're a startup, you're young, you only have a partner, but things like that and impact, I think, are very attractive things that I think could be that it factor for a lot of entrepreneurs to get angel investment. I think what could be difficult is, I think sometimes our regulatory, especially when it comes to business registration, paying taxes, we see a lot of startups, I don't know what the figure is, but a lot of them fail within the first 3 years, not because their ideas aren't good, but because they're demanded to pay so many taxes and fees and operating costs before they even take off, before they can even hit the ground. So it's that, that uncertainty of, will I survive in my first 3 years because there's so many taxes and fees that I have to pay. And if these entrepreneurs or startups don't have some sort of backing, whether it's through a regulatory body or whether it's through maybe a government co-signing their operations, building that confidence in an investor that, listen, not only is this idea, this startup, this team is great, but they have this backing from their, from a government agency or from their ministry, and the ministry is behind them, and they want to ensure that they don't fail in the first 3 years. So that extra backing that's that they may come from, it doesn't have to be government, but these startups need backing, need someone with experience, with authority to vouch for them and to make sure that they don't fail. I think that really would be something that would help angel investors not walk away?
Thank you. Those are great perspectives. You've touched on interesting points, which lead me to frame a scenario for Dale. Dale, I'm an angel investor. I don't care about the sector that I want to invest in. I just care that the idea is innovative and I want to inject funds. I want to mentor. I want to help with knowledge acquisition, and I want to help the entrepreneur on the ground build networks. What are the policy issues that obtain on the ground that would make me want to come into Tanzania? What are the laws or regulatory frameworks that might dissuade me from doing so?
Yeah, again, thank you, Emilia. As we know, if we are talking about Tanzania, we have, Tanzania is a country, have, I could say 5 or 6 major factors that any investor would be attracted with. We are talking about economic stability first. We are talking about a country that has been averaging 7% GDP growth every year. For a while now, we are talking about natural resources. The country has got huge arable land. We are talking about huge coastline from Tanga to Mtwara. You are talking about tourist attractions. You are talking about oil and the gas, all those rich natural resources. But you are also talking about strategic location. Tanzania it's a gate to these many. Tanzania is a gate for Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda. You are talking about DRC, you are talking about Zambia, you are talking about Mozambique. All those are landlocked countries that really need goods from Tanzania. And it's really, it has got a very good strategic location. And the fact that it is also in the EAC, East African Community, Common Market, and also the SADC Free Trade Area, it has huge incentive for someone to invest. We are talking about also peace and the stability, of course, in Tanzania. We know Tanzania, since independence, we have never heard about anything wrong about its political system and so forth. But we're also talking about market access. Again, market access based on the fact that it is in East African common market, but also in SADC. And actually, very recently, Dar es Salaam signed the African Continent Free Trade Area, which really will allow, it really gives a huge, many millions of consumers. But as well, another attraction, I think, in Tanzania is the presence of what we call Tanzania Investment Center. TIC has been acting as a one-stop shop, and it's really helping investor to get lots of facilities like a company incorporation. You can get the work permit, as they said. You can always get your tax identification number. You can always get many environmental certificate, OSHA certificate, and the other residence permit, and so forth. So in reality, those are attractions. But then, if you ask me, are they enough? Because we are saying that the angel investor has already decided to invest, but then what else can be said? I would say, is it really enough? Maybe not yet. If you look at what is happening now in the current recent report of doing business, indicates that Tanzania is at 141. It's 141 country, I think. That really shows that there are still issues to be addressed, especially in terms of bureaucracy, in terms of costs of compliance, and so forth.
Thank you for sharing that. It does provide fresh perspective on the issues that we need to consider. And I would love for Dr. Hoseana to talk to us even more specifically around tax structures that one could encounter. what would I require to even engage in the country in terms of the regulatory framework that I would engage when wanting to be an angel investor in Tanzania? What would I require? Would I need to have a lawyer on the ground? What would require me to do so? So, Dr. Hoseana, please share perspectives based on existing frameworks that exist. And I know that with your experience on working on the guidelines, you might be able to draw parallels to specific regulations and specific laws that obtain in Tanzania that one would encounter if they would want to come in as an angel investor. So feel free to speak on a broad spectrum of issues. Tax is definitely an issue that is of interest for sure, but what other regulatory issues would an angel investor be interested in? And what would they encounter if they want to come into Tanzania?
Okay, thank you. I think the good thing with an angel investor is that he comes in whereby there's already a company set up, already set, and meaning that it has already overcome the startup hurdles which Andrew was speaking to, alluding to, that, and we don't want to scare our angel investors that actually when you see 10 young enterprises, small enterprises, small or medium enterprises on the ground, it means there were like out of 10, maybe there were 90 which fell, didn't see that. I think there is about more than 70%, I think, in one of the reports, that they can't see their 50th birthday. But then for the angel investors, they are lucky that you come in where they have with the, to team up with the enterprises which actually have overcome that dangerous period of survival. If it was COVID, that they are already vaccinated, they are not likely now to fail due to initial hurdles caused by bureaucratic procedures. And but they have also to know that generally, because you have the general framework of taxes, which we normally mention, that you have to pay corporate taxes, which 2 years ago the government reduced those. But I think they say when it comes to the actual operations of businesses, I would expect Andrew to speak more about it because of the experience of private sector. I think one of the complaints which the government is working on is an unclear interpretation, sometimes arbitrary interpretation of some of the laws governing some of the bureaucratic requirements which a company must fulfill. And I think if I was counting in the agriculture sector alone, for the past 5 years, the government has responded by repealing or modifying those undesirable regulations and taxes. More than, Andrew, I think in one of the reports I saw, it's like more than 150 in the agriculture and livestock sector alone, because I think I have some bias as an agriculture economist. And then you see that, for example, to be specific, for example, it was easier for a youth, a young enterprise to say they want to set up a greenhouse venture using drip irrigation, etc. So the government, first you had to pay, before it was taxable, the import duty. So the government removed the import duty for new sets, kits for greenhouses. But then those things are very fragile. It means after season you have to replace, but they will still, the taxes, the import duty for the spare part were prohibitive. So greenhouses will last for only 2 years. They are laid to waste because you can't afford. Again, government responded by removing import duty on parts or spare parts. It has done the same for dairy industry, the canes, the machines. Of course, the tractors, I think those ones, they are done a long time before. So what I'm trying to say, the ecosystem, the policy ecosystem at the moment, it's a continuous work on progress. The government is responding. So you could imagine you are repealing more than 150, and yet people are still complaining that it's not enough. So it means that it's true. The government, and they know in the policy regulatory reform, which the private sector foundation signed with the government 2 years ago. I think there were more than 100 issues which government and the private sector have to work on. So I don't know how many they have already done so far, but I know when President Samia came in, she promised that she's going to carry on working on those reforms which they have agreed. So the good thing that the private sector and government have identified all the issues which actually are constraining private sector investment. That's a good thing. So it's just a matter of time working on those. It might be slow progress, but at least we know we are moving in the right direction. That's what I can assure angel investors as they come in. Yeah.
Fantastic
Over.
responses. I love how everyone provided examples, but no one is truly giving me feedback on perhaps potential areas of reform. And it's not a bad scorecard on the existing players. It's simply a matter of coming together to have candid conversations around what can we do to improve. Learning, unlearning, relearning are steps that individuals must take, groups must make, and even societies, including countries, must engage in. So please don't feel as if I'm putting or pushing you on the fence, but I really do want to encourage you to think about practical steps that different actors, and it doesn't just have to be government. I'd love for you to think about practical steps that we should take to ensure that we're moving in the right direction, that we're keeping pace with change, so that we can create that enabling environment for angel investors. Now, I'm gonna start with Deo. I saw his hand go up. So Deo, I'm gonna start with you, then I'm gonna come back to you, Dr. Hosanna, because I see your hand up, and then I'm gonna allow Andrew to have final words on that particular question. Specific steps, what should we be thinking about? What direction should we be taking? What reforms should we be making? Over to you, Dale.
Thank you very much. So again, maybe we have to acknowledge first that the concept of angel investment is a new concept to us, and then not dump it together as the normal investment policies that we have been having. If you ask TIC and the government, they are going to tell you that this year we had these many projects investing in Tanzania. But you look at these projects, you are talking about an investor you are talking about a Dangote coming and establish a cement plant we are talking about another one coming and establish, let's say, a fertilizer plant, not really angel investing. Now, the question is, how do we really get the angel investment really ecosystem grow and become just any other investment ecosystem? First, I would say that maybe we need to develop first a policy related to angel investing. The policy will help us really get an understanding. What is it? Who are the players in it? And what is the challenge in it, so that we can really address it. I think that's the nice thing about having a policy framework. But maybe in the policy framework, we also talk about how do we develop then this angel investor network? Because we are saying, I was saying, I'm in Iringa as we speak. I know Andrew said he's in Arusha, maybe Dr. Arunogel is in Dar es Salaam. But if you ask, I think 90% in Iringa will tell you, what are you talking about? What is the angel investment? I don't get it. So I think the policy, somewhere there will be a policy statement which is going to talk about developing angel investor network in Tanzania. Because I listened to when the chairperson of WBA, when she was opening, in her opening remarks, and she was giving an example of this angel investor who passed away, of course. And then we are talking about local and international angel investor. How do we deal with them? How do we make sense of this? How do we even encourage Tanzania entrepreneurs to even get that concept that, you know what, there is angel investment. I think now, because I have all these billions in banks and so forth, why don't I use this angel investment concept? So I think having a policy framework, having an angel investment policy is going to help us on one aspect, but I think also the policy is going to help us kind of also linking these youth startups and the angel investor network. Because how do we create awareness? I think in the policy, somehow, somewhat, the government, the policy is going to say that we need to create awareness. So there will be maybe educational programs related to angel investment and so on. So for me, for now, in a shorter time that I have, I think I'm going to limit myself.
Thank you very much. So Dale has spoken about considering a specific angel investment policy framework that actually clearly defines who the actors are and what it is that we're talking about. He's spoken about an angel investment network, ensuring that different people can speak to each other so that even those sitting in Iringa or the Southern Corridor or the Southern Highlands or anywhere else where this topic might be completely alien, not just novel, also have their finger on the pulse. He's spoken about sensitization, raising awareness around these issues, whether it's through seminars or the like. Dr. Hoseana, what are your thoughts? What direction should we be moving towards?
My thinking was, I think when it comes, because, an angel investor from a legal tax law perspective, is an investor. He wants returns. It's just like a bank which would have given you a loan. The only difference is that they are not as critically examining your balance sheet and your history, etc. That's the difference. They want a profit out of whatever they invest in. So to me, if I have to look at the laws, it should be laws which actually prepare to create enough critical mass of small and medium firms which are attractive to angel investors. Currently, our tax laws give some relief for firms which for small enterprises whose capital is below 5 million. They are called micro. Those micro 5 million below 5 million shillings. Actually, they only pay 200,000 shillings a year as tax. So it means that maybe we should change to increase the capital base for defining what a small enterprise is, so that because a small IT company, for example, owned by two graduates, for sure, their startup capital will be more than 5 million. Since there is more than 5 million, it means they are subjected to tax laws which are not as friendly. I think that's why they can't survive to the 50th birthday. So it means we have to change the law to expand. And I think the definition of 5 million, I think, was done like 20 years ago. So I think that's why it's due. I think it's time now to redefine what is small, what is micro first, what is small, and what is medium. And I think that's an important entry point. I think Andrew can start working, lobbying, because his job is to lobby with the government. It's high time the National Bureau of Statistics works with the Tanzania Revenue Authority to redefine what is micro, what is small, and what's the medium in terms of capital base, in terms of number of people employed, etc. So that one, once we do that, and then of course the issue of having some awareness creation and changing mindset is also critical, because if you know that even among ourselves as a family of friends, we tend to help some people, we give them capital. Even the banks sometimes, if they are not very careful, we have a strange mindset in terms of trying to start enjoying the fruits of our business and taking away from where the business is supposed to be growing. I think misdirecting capital to other areas is one of the diseases of most of the Tanzanians. I think that again, I know our colleague from the African Development Bank didn't say much about that weakness, but I think we've had people, they start firms, companies, start growing well, and then they get excited, they take the capital, the profit, start investing elsewhere, which is not related at all to the line of business they have. So basically, suffocating the growth of that core business, which has generated that profit. I think that again is part of what the debate has been going on for some time in terms of our school syllabus, business education from early stages for people to have business acumen. It's a mindset issue, which has to be built. And of course, there I know there's I think he has that experience even when they're trying to support these incubator projects. I know even for Sokoine, they have the same problem sometimes. Even Costec has the same problem. They try to support youth for some time, but after some time they divert. They go to other areas. I think that's a challenge but having said that, I think in my view, for Tanzania, maybe we should try to encourage, should go step by step as part of that campaign of building domestic angels. I think the first step will be to target institutional angels like the Stanbic case, and I know also NMB. For example, NMB was supporting actually, was it an NMB, African, Commercial Bank of Africa, for example. It actually tried to support extract an angel for young Sokoine graduates going outside the country to understand their businesses in Israel. So I think that one we can, once we have good example from the corporate world, then we move to individuals. And I was telling the late Madam Mwambenja that I know when I retire, within 1 year, all my pension is gone. So there's no money which I can now use actually to invest in small businesses. I can just be an advisor in terms of ideas, but I think that's one of, we don't have a critical mass, I think, of individual or business angels compared to the number of young enterprises, small enterprises which are being created every day and have very fantastic ideas to work on.
Wonderful.
Those are my contributions. Yes. Over.
Thank you so much. You've spoken about redefining the tax base, particularly capital base. You've spoken about going step by step, targeting institutional angels and learning from best practices. Andrew, before we go to the questions in the chat, any thoughts based on Deo's and Hoseana's contributions?
Yes, thanks, Emilia. A few thoughts. One, I just wanted to highlight that the government of Tanzania is working on a few policies that would hopefully improve this this regulatory and policy framework around investing. One, there's the SME development policy that's being developed under the Ministry of Industry and Trade. Another one is the SME financing policy under the Ministry of Finance. I've seen draft of the SME development policy, not the finance policy, but I don't know to what extent specifically angel investing, but I know there are elements of how startups can be supported, both institutionally, capacity building, but also financially. So we look forward to seeing those policies come out and how may that improve the investment climate. The third thing is the Tanzania Investment Act that's also being a new act because the current act is from 1997, so it's quite outdated under the Prime Minister's office as well. So these three policies, myself personally, I look forward to them coming out and seeing how they would improve the investment climate, especially when it comes to supporting SMEs and startups. So to your question about practical steps, I think first and foremost, we need to identify who is ready for angel investment in Tanzania. Who are they? Where are they? And what do they do? If I'm an angel investor, I want to invest in Tanzania, where do I go? Who do I ask? There isn't one place to go and find out who are the potential enterprises or entrepreneurs that I can invest in. So we need a place that can house this information, or a custodian of who these investor-ready enterprises and startups are. Luckily, there is a Tanzanian Angel Investors Network, actually. I see one of the questions someone was asking, how can we establish that? It does exist. I know it's membership-based, so it's not an open to the public thing, but that could be a good starting point as far as housing these investor-ready enterprises under one roof, so that an angel investor has one source of information to better make a decision. So that's a practical thing that we can do. It doesn't take a lot of resources, a lot of effort. Is just gathering information about who's out there, because not every startup needs an angel investor. So I think even identifying, okay, what criteria do you have or do you need? I think it's a nice thing to say, where I'm looking for an angel investor, but then if you really ask the right questions and really dig deep, like maybe I don't think you need an angel investor right now. You may need technical support, you may need capacity building, you may need training, but you're not ready for an angel investor. So even doing that sort of like analysis and assessment is important before we just start throwing angel investment, that term angel investment, out there. And then I agree with what Dr. Lunogelo said as well about just creating awareness about, like I mentioned earlier, I think it's a new concept. So creating awareness about what it means to be an angel investor, and also what you need to be ready for an angel investor. I think that needs to be some sort of campaign, and I think that's where we as private sector can come in as well. Work with government, work with actors on the ground, other private sector actors on the ground, development partners, to sort of create this angel investment sort of culture, and make it a very common conversation, and so that both sides know what exactly it is and what exactly it requires. So I think that those are probably the two tangible things we can start even tomorrow to work on, so to speak. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And indeed, thank you to all of the panelists. You've shed light on the frameworks that obtain in Tanzania, your thoughts and perspectives on what we need to do to move this particular investment environment forward to be more conducive for angel investors and for entrepreneurs seeking angel investments. One of the biggest takeaways for me is the novelty of the topic, and how both people desirous of investing and those desirous of attracting the investment need to be sensitized on whether or not they actually fall within this particular subject matter at all. And if not, perhaps for us to learn more about what the benefits of angel investments could be. And so, Madam Chair Tuti Mwambenja, the WBAF finds relevance in Tanzania because it's a great opportunity to be able to talk about this particular subject matter, as well as introduce entrepreneurs to international investors and perhaps local investors who are already within this international network. Now on to the questions, and I see Andrew has already responded to one, but I want to go to Joanne Bessia's comment. And she more or less is agreeing with all of you. She talks about the need to work on the tax burden, to reduce regulations, to ensure that entrepreneurs' businesses can grow and survive. She talks about finding solutions in East Africa, especially on easing the entrepreneur's burden. Joanne, I agree with you. And I saw that there were more specific questions from Emmanuel Mwangoka, who asks, what needs to be done policy-wise to link the entrepreneur's ecosystem and the angel investment ecosystem? Let me come to Dale. Please be brief, because we have a few questions to get through before we move on to our next panel.
I think we have touched on that. We said that I think we need to have a policy in place, but angel investment policy in place, but also, as Andrew said, having a place where you can have information about these startups and so forth. But as well, the presence of these incubator and innovation hubs as well should be playing, of course, a major role, of course, to get these startup investor ready or angel investor ready. Because as he was saying, Andrew, not every startup will qualify for angel investment. So how do we make sure that our innovation hubs, our incubators really do develop these startups? As you were saying, they have got, I think it's Dr. Nogero talked about it, they have some amazing, actually, especially with IT nowadays, we are having some amazing innovations, of course. But then how do we get them ready? Because as our keynote speaker, Nema, said, angel investors also are not going in blindly. They are looking into there are some qualification that they are looking at. A good team, a sound business plan, clear operation, and so forth. So it's the job as well of innovation hubs and incubators to get them ready. But as well, maybe at macro level to have a policy and sensitize. I think the policy, we talk about sensitization, creating these networks. If we talk about institutional framework, what is the role of TPSF? What is the role of these incubators? What is the role of a certain ministry? What is the role of certain department in a certain ministry? What is the role of CIDO? I don't know. But I think the policy will even talk about this institutional framework about collaboration and networking. I think, yeah.
Great, thank you, Deo. I see that Emmanuel is encouraging TPSF to bridge the gap between the different actors. And Emmanuel will say that it's not really a question, but I think it's definitely something that TPSF through Andrew can perhaps consider going forward. I've reviewed the remaining questions. Joanne had another question, which I see Nema had already responded to in writing, so I'm not going to go to that in the interest of time. But I do want to give you, the panelists, just 30 seconds, please, because we're out of time. 30 seconds for any parting shots on the issues that we have canvassed, from looking at what the investment ecosystem is, from looking at what are the perspectives of an angel investor vis-a-vis an entrepreneur seeking angel investments. We've looked at the policy framework that obtains in the country and your perspectives on what needs to change. So what are your parting shots in respect of angel investments, the regulatory environment here in Tanzania? And I want to start with Andrew. I'll go to Deo, and I'll have Dr. Hoseana have the final word. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Amelia. I was trying to think which one of many parting shots should I talk about. But I think we may sometimes get lost in the term angel investment and the definition. But I think angel investing has been and does happen in Tanzania in different shapes and forms. Whether it's a family member investing in another family member's idea, whether it's the savings and loan groups that people come together and they raise funds and they put money into something. So it happens in one shape or form. So I think it's a new concept, but it's not a new sort of behavior. It happens in different ways. I think my parting piece of advice or request is for more local businesses and companies to invest in local ideas, local entrepreneurs, not necessarily put your money straight away, but help them grow, help them develop their ideas, develop their creativity, develop their innovation, provide that support structure so that when they require the investment, they are ready, and they give you more confidence as well. So I think we need as much as we need an angel investors network policy, we do need a strong business mentorship ecosystem as well. Help these young people, young ideas grow, be more confident, keep up with the pace of the world. So I think as private sector, we do have a role to play in growing, building capacity of individuals and their ideas as well before we even start thinking about investing. I think good ideas, a good team, a competent team will attract investment whether there's a policy or not. So let's not lose sight of that as well.
Thank you, Andrew. Over to you, Dale, with your parting shot.
For me, I would again go back to the government developing educational programs to make sure that every player in the angel investment ecosystem does understand what it is and what is their role. And maybe somehow, somewhat, as the concept of angel investment keeps growing, hopefully I think they already have it, but because we don't have enough information on it, maybe we could have then this, like what again the name I was saying, the keynote speaker, what are the key criteria that angel investors are looking at, so that especially when, for instance, hubs, incubators are developing, they are offering this mentorship, coaching and mentorship to startups, they can guide them towards that direction. At the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that financing is still really an issue, and especially when we are talking about now youth startups. We are talking about lots of graduates graduating with no jobs and so forth. So somehow, somewhat, they have to go into this. So we are encouraging them to be innovative, coming up with ideas that are innovative, and so that can be where investors can invest. But I think at the end of the day, this network of investors will have it to maybe to disseminate the information. Hey guys, this is what we are looking for into this, and as well, maybe TPSF continue with on the lobbying and the advocacy side or issue before the government on issues of tax burden to, especially I'm really focused on youth startups. You have these guys who have graduated. They were expecting to get jobs. They did not get jobs. They decided to go for, okay, maybe my fallback is to start something. Okay, hopefully they went into a certain hub or whatever. They got an advice. They started developing the ideas of, maybe it's an IT solution. You are talking about maybe IT solution along agricultural value chain, and it's really sound. And then as long as, okay, go and follow all the regulatory issues. You go to TRA, to brand and so forth, and there the taxes are coming. So you would wonder that maybe we need to consider that these guys really, maybe these young startups, let's really remove this. Let's give them a grace period, like the way we treat, bigger investors, so that if they aren't burdened with the taxes, maybe they're also going to grow to a level that where an investor or an angel investor can feel confident, or maybe confident that maybe I can invest in this one.
Thank you very much, Dale. And Dr. Hoseana, we really are out of time. Your parting shots in 30 seconds or less.
Yeah, I know you put me at the end, so that I just say thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this. But I think what Dale was just said is critical, that we must review the tax laws, tax rebates, tax breaks, and the solution actually is about also defining what is small, what is medium. That's what I had already said. But I wanted also to put to task Tuti that you pick on Andrew's idea that actually there's angeling going on within the country. People try to help their relatives, their friends, but what is lacking, Andrew, is that we don't mentor, we don't put conditions, we don't understand. They just say, Mjomba, uncle, I need a million ishirini. There's a good business, and then you just give the million ishirini. After 6 months, the million ishirini is the 20 million is dissolved, and then you blame that person because you never even did not even look at the business idea. You don't even try to see I am connect you to somebody who is experienced so that you can learn how that business is operated. And that happens actually even for experienced people. It doesn't matter about age actually. Anyone going to any new business needs mentoring, needs some ideas, needs some experience. When I retired myself, I thought beekeeping was so easy. I took my pension, made 50 hives to start with, put in the bush there, and then after one season, all burnt in fire. So I did not, I thought it was so easy. So as I'm saying that now, if it was somebody's money, I would be blamed until, but it's all my money. But what I know is that even if you are, it doesn't matter your age, so long as you are going to business which is new, you need mentoring, you need the learning. Pleasure. Thank you very much for giving us this time to contribute.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hosiana. You end on a critical point. Angel investment is what the WBAF terms smart investment. It's not just about financing. There's more to it. There's the mentorship, the knowledge acquisition, and the networks that go behind it. It's something that is still novel in Tanzania. We can't hide behind the fact that, yes, we have been innovating in other spaces, but there is now a need to think about and potentially grow this particular ecosystem. I can't thank the three of you enough, Andrew Mahiga, Dale Sabokwigina, and Dr. Hosiana Lunogelo, for your insights, for sharing your experience with us. It has been such a pleasure. I'd love for you to stay on. I know questions are going to keep coming that might be relevant, but at this point, I would love to segue to our next panel. So thank you very much for your time. Asanteni sana.
Pleasure, thank you.
Wonderful. Moving on. Reports indicate that there are markets that are smaller than Tanzania that are attracting larger angel investments than Tanzania. So let's shift our focus onto effective ways for startups and small and medium enterprises to attract investors. In this regard, Africa is viewed as the host of the youngest population in the world, which, like it is in the rest of the globe, is becoming more what they call digitally native and innovating within more and more sectors, which are becoming more and more technologically friendly, such as logistics and agriculture. Financial inclusion is now on vogue. So what are the effective ways for startups and SMEs to attract angel investors? Our final panel comprises industry experts who will spotlight key areas that an investor is looking at when considering to invest, as well as the issues that entrepreneurs need to focus on when preparing their pitches. So Emmanuel, we will be coming to the criteria that you're trying to outline. And our first panelist is Dr. Alfred Nsemo. Welcome, Alfred, who is the Managing Director at Aleka Capital. He is also the former General Manager at Uber Tanzania. Welcome, Dr. Alfred, and very briefly, talk to us about your portfolio.
Thank you very much, Emilia. Looking forward to having a very fruitful conversation with the rest of the panel. Brief introduction about myself. As Emilia said, I'm managing Aleka Capital, which is a private equity fund. And by private equity, meaning that we have elements of angel investment because our focus is on early stage companies, mainly ones that don't have a business at all, that you call them early stage pre-seed, and some that are already in motion with the business, meaning they formulated their hypothesis and at seed stage, right? So primarily, Aleka Capital invests in early stage company and then divests when the company is going towards maturity across quite a lot of areas.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alfred. I see we're moving out of the policy and theory into the meat, the practical aspects of angel investments. Thank you for that introduction. Next, we have George Solomon, the Chief Executive Officer at Wenzhou Hams Information and Technology Company Limited. Welcome, George. Please briefly tell us about your portfolio.
Thank you so much, Emily. We at Wenzhou Hamster, we basically focus on development of softwares to people, and also our main business scope is actually we run a food delivery application, so an e-commerce application which runs in China, basically main in China. Yeah.
Thank you, George, for keeping it brief. Next, we have Ansel Misango, who is the Chief Executive Officer at G-Mobile Tanzania. Welcome, Ansel Misango. Are you with us? I'm not seeing Ansel at the moment, so I'm going to move on to our final panelist, Maro Kohi, Chief Executive Officer at Tanzania Securities Limited. Welcome, and please tell us in a few seconds about your portfolio.
Thank you, Emilia. So my name is Maro Patrick Koi. I lead a 27-year-old company called Tanzania Securities Limited. The trading name is normal TSL. So TSL is basically a financial services firm that operates in the capital markets space. And we help our customers through 3 operating units. The first one is the corporate finance advisory, where our strength has always been the capital raising transactions, and to date we've helped our clients to raise over 450 billion shillings. We normally target these growth companies. We've not really played in the early stage space, but that's where we're looking right now. And our second unit is the asset management, where we help our customers with investment management. And currently we are managing over 60 billion shillings. Then we have a third one, which is a securities brokerage line, which is the oldest. And here we facilitate trades in terms of buy and sell transactions for equity and bonds. Over to you, Emilia.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure having the 3 of you online. If Ansel joins us, then we will introduce him at that stage. But let's get some foundational discussions going. Let's get a better understanding about who we're talking about in respect of a startup, in respect of an SME, a small or medium enterprise. And let's start with George. I see you nodding. So talk to me very briefly about what we should be thinking about when it comes to a startup and an SME in your perspective.
All right, thank you so much, Emily. So basically, when you talk about startup, it's basically, according to my opinion, I would say it's simply a beginning of a business. This is the first stage of a business whereby before it developed, it's the first stage where it began. So that's what I would prefer as a startup. And then as a SME, I would say it's a second stage of a business after a startup, because this is where business start to generate revenue, and this is where businesses starts to generate, I would say, as well income. And this is where you start to see the growth of the business in terms of expansion of market, and also in terms of development in terms of in the interior and as well in the market size. So an SME, I'd as well say it's the second stage whereby we see development of revenue, of numbers, and as well development of the market size in terms of the business.
Wonderful. Thank you for that distinction. I want to go to Alfred. You spoke about pre-seeding, and WBAF uses similar terminology. When we're talking about pre-seed, seeding, and scaling up, please talk to us a little bit about a startup vis-a-vis an SME.
Thank you very much, Emilia. So this is a very interesting question, actually, because I was thinking about it on a practical sense. How would you define a startup vis-a-vis an SME, right? And I think, at least in our context of Tanzania, I could probably say that startups are young companies founded to develop a unique product or a service, bring it to the market, and make it irresistible and irreplaceable for customers, right? So, startups are rooted in innovation, addressing the deficiencies of existing products, or creating entirely new categories of goods and services, thereby disrupting entrenched ways of thinking and doing business, for entire industries. So that's why many startups, can be regarded to as disruptors, right? So you think of, your household names like Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, all these are now big tech, but were once startups. Now, when you move to a private equity or a venture capital standpoint in terms of defining what a startup is, it's a bit different. I think Paul Graham of Y Combinator will tell you that, startups are companies that are designed to scale very quickly, right? So the focus would be exponential growth, unconstrained by geography, right? Which then would make it distinctively different from a small business or an SME, right? So according to the private equity or venture capital world, a restaurant in one town is not a startup or a franchise, So because the most crucial characteristic of a startup is scale, right? A startup is a business that has the intention of being a global shaker, right? But then when you then look at it from a practical point of view, you can then look at this life cycle, right? So early stage in the life cycle of an enterprise in which the entrepreneur moves from, the idea stage to securing finance, laying down the basic structure of the business, and initiating operations or trading. You can say that process is referred to as, starting up, therefore startup. I don't want to go into too much detail, but we keep talking about that.
Wonderful. You touched on something that is a perfect segue to the next question I want to ask, and I'll be posing it tomorrow. There's this issue of scalability that might make a startup attractive to an investor. And so I would want to ask you, what makes any business, whether it is at the startup phase, whether it is ready to scale, what makes a business investable or attractive for an angel investor?
Thank you, Emilia. First of all, I would like to thank Alfred for pointing out the element of scalability. Well, different enterprises have different criteria. So I would say, for instance, a startup. So a startup is basically looking for, a scalable, repeatable, profitable business model. And during that search phase, there are basically two milestones. So the first one is normally, you want to verify your hypothesis. And this is where, you'll be attractive if at least you have a minimum viable product. This is a stage where you've verified there's a customer out there who has a problem, and then you've come up with a solution, which is basically, a concept or an MVP. And once you've nailed an MVP is a minimum viable product, and it's basically a product that has, the minimum or the basic features. An MVP is not a prototype. It's a product with simplest features. And any angel investor that is looking at a startup at that stage, that is a milestone. But apart from having an MVP, there has to be a team, the founding team. There has to be a good combination. There has to be someone who is the technical guy. There has to be someone who is more of a salesperson. There has to be someone who is more of a leader to put together the team. And those are the key issues for a startup that is on the customer discovery stage. But within that phase of searching a business model, there could also be the validation stage where they already have the MVP. Now they're going out to try to sell. Once they go out and try to sell, they have to achieve something called product market fit. meaning that they've already validated that stage. That is a very attractive stage for any angel investor. And you see the team growing as well. They're getting some little bit of some traction, and this is the point where, in terms of the target market, they're not targeting the mainstream market. They're targeting the early adopters niche. People who like technology and whatnot, people who are ready to use that product. So if they've nailed that stage, those are the key milestones. I mean, there are other criteria, but I would say those are the key areas that, if any entrepreneur, reaches, then the world is theirs.
Fantastic. You've been methodical. You've spoken to us about minimal viable product, or MVP. You've talked about having a good team with delineated roles and responsibilities, such as sales, such as technical aspects, or a team leader. You've also spoken about the product market fit. And so I want to ask George, you are working in a rather different market, an interesting jurisdiction when we now start speaking about China. And so I want to pose the exact same questions to you. What is a Chinese angel investor looking at when they're looking at a market like Tanzania? Does the same situation obtain? Are there other things that they're looking at? Talk to us a little bit about your experience.
Thank you so much, Emily. So basically, as it depends. It doesn't really. I would really not say that it doesn't matter which investor is. Like, all investors really focus on the same aspect as how they want this business to be. So for let's say as a Chinese investor would really focus on the skills, as how the Tuti before she said, skills, and as well the team themselves. So the team has to also have really not just Tanzanians, or not just the same country people, but also different kind of people, so they can all have the same knowledge and to have a same vision. And as well, in terms of the business, should also, I would really say, should also really have like a prototype, as how Maro said here. So an MVP, it's not really basically like a prototype, but it's actually a really product that we keep in the market, so we can have feedbacks from the customers and as well see the revenue and its market expansion. So I would really say the skills and as well the product itself, how great it is. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Interesting perspectives there. Alfred, please feel free to tack on to the last question, but I want us to also move on to how entrepreneurs need to position themselves. We've spoken about the MVP issue. We've spoken about the team, the product market fit, which seems to also obtain within the Chinese market, and how a Chinese angel investor might regard a business in Tanzania. But I would love for you to talk to us a little bit about how does one position themselves so that they can be seen. It's not enough to just have a great idea. I think many people have great ideas that could potentially be scaled and generate a large return on investment. So how does one position themselves, not only to be attractive as an investment in terms of the business, but to also ensure that they are within the investor's purview, that they are seen, that they can be contacted. And I later will come back to the other two panelists to see about pitch. But let's talk about positioning.
So thank you very much, Amelia. Just echoing down from the points that were raised, obviously, by George and Maro, just add some candid response here as far as money is concerned, okay? I think the common misconception of entrepreneurs is that, venture capitalists, angel investors, private equity funds have unlimited funds that they just intend to give to businesses, right? I see a question here from one member, panelist, sorry, it was Emmanuel, who says, why do most VCs and angel investors decide to invest in Kenya? What is lacking in Tanzania, in the Tanzania market? So it all comes down to that. First of all, you have to understand that we're in a marketplace. Money has a cost. Money has, therefore, a reward. In any business, there's a commodity that you sell, and therefore, you get a profit from. Angel investors, private equity companies, and so forth have money as their commodity. If I'm going to give you 10,000 shillings, I don't want you to give me back 10,000 shillings. I'll be very disappointed if you lose it. Even more disappointed if you give me 10,000 back, because I've wasted time. There's opportunity costs, obviously, and so forth and so on, right? So you actually have to start off by understanding what exactly is my give so that I can get something, right? That's where a lot of entrepreneurs, probably in Tanzania, fail to understand that you need to have a premium on the money, right? Now, when we come now to the part of the entrepreneur, right? There's so many problems that entrepreneurs can solve and wish to solve, but in terms of your total addressable market, difficulty of penetrating and making a successful business out of it, have you really sat down and done your homework? Do you have the competence to execute this in terms of like yourself, as an entrepreneur or as a team, right? And then also, are you in the right environment to do so, right? Because a lot of times people might decide to be like, okay, I'm going to be in Dar es Salaam, but why not be, somewhere close to your resources? So for example, you want to start a fish business, then you're in Dar, knowing very well that there's a lot of fish in Mwanza. Did you think about that? So these are elements that, require both parties to actually understand. And it's always very clear as far as angel investors and private equity companies and on exactly what they need to do as far as allocating capital. But sometimes, or most times, it's not clear on the other side of the entrepreneur, as in, why do you need the capital and what's in it for me, right? I think I'll leave it at that and we can unpack it more.
Fantastic. Mara, I'd love to hear your perspectives as well around positioning. I think Alfred has given us a running start, and I want you to maybe look at what are the things that particularly an angel investor is hearing out or looking out for in a pitch. What is it that the business or the entrepreneurs need to convey, to articulate to somebody who's listening and thinking, well, I'm trying to size up whether or not my investment would have a good return?
Thank you, Emilia. As we continue with this panel, there's a word that keeps repeating itself: entrepreneur. And I would really like to, at some point, for us to really understand who is really an entrepreneur. Because if someone wakes up one morning, registers a company and says, I have an idea, is that really an entrepreneur? And I think that is a big question that we really need to look at. In terms of, how do they position themselves? Well, there's a generic, pitch in terms of the content, just cover what your company is, what's your mission, what's your vision. Talk about yourself, the vision of that company in terms of the 5-10 years, where do you see that business? Talk about the mission, why are you really doing what you're doing? It could be impact related and whatnot. Then there's a founding team. You need to cover very well the founding team. How does the team, complement itself? Which earlier I did mention, historical background of these people. Alfred just mentioned about the fish business. You're going into the fish business. Who understands that the business or the technical side of fish? And another one is you really need to tackle down what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And this is an interesting area, because I hear a lot of time people talk about innovation, but innovation really is about coming up with something that, meets an unmet need in a way that is different, is unique. So if you open up your shop, your butchery, saying that I'm selling fish, it's not really attractive unless you're coming up with a new way of doing things. So, or maybe you found a unique problem that no one is really looking at. And then after covering that problem, you have to come up with a solution. Again, your solution has to be unique. If it's a business as usual solution, as I think during the earlier panel, it was mentioned that innovation is what drives the world today. If you don't come up with an innovative idea, the chances that your company is going to grow at least relatively high are very minimal. Or the chances of you beating your competitors is going to be very, very minimal. Apart from the covering the solution side, you also have to talk about the size of the market. Is that how many people have that problem? Where are you going to be really targeting? Are you taking a niche, a narrow scope approach, which you should? It's more of covering the strategy, but there has to be a quantification of that strategy. Now you have to go to the numbers. An investor is a numbers person. Talk about the revenue, the projections, but above all, the revenue and the cost, and the profitability is one thing. But look at the return on investment, and that's the key area. Investors put their money expecting that the money is going to grow, and this is where they really want to understand your capability of creating value for the shareholders. How are you going to be able to generate more revenue than your competitor? They want to see the numbers, but that is more of a generic pitch, and I don't know. You can be creative. If you have an elevator pitch, you're meeting Alfred, Aleka Capital, and you have 5 seconds to entice Alfred. Clearly, you're not going to go through all that process. You need to do your research. What is Aleka Capital doing? What are they interested in? Because investors have different objectives. Some of them are looking for growth of their capital. Some of them, high risk takers, some of them are sector agnostic, so you have to do your research. So you can, if you meet an investor, angel investors, you probably can say, I have an opportunity, that can grow your capital 10x within 3 years. You have hesitation, so I think we have to be creative when it comes to, pitching. So yeah, over to you, Emilia.
You've raised some important issues which are probably killing the dreams of many people who probably think that they're operating viably within this space. You raise important questions. Are you really an entrepreneur? Do you really have an innovative solution to a problem that impacts a market that would be desirable to an investor? Have you done your research? Do you know your numbers? Key questions to be asking, and perhaps questions that might give people pause a little bit before they march on in this particular space. And and Alfred spoke to an issue that I think you piggybacked on very well. If you look at something like the parable of talents, if you look at one of these spiritual books, what you give should yield more for the investor. They're not looking to give an investment and get that back. WBAF talks about angel investors looking to get back at least 25% in addition to what they put in. These are key issues that we need to be looking at as we go forward. So thank you both for touching on that. And George, I want you to add on that. Are there other perspectives that you have in terms of positioning? It's an important issue, really, something that you who are working in this space already understand, but so many others do not. And so this is why I want to just spend a little bit more time here. So George, we've heard those perspectives. Do you have something new to shed light on?
Yeah, thank you so much again, Emily. And then to add on, I would really think that as an entrepreneur, as a myself, young entrepreneur, I would say something really which will really make the investors or angel investors really attracted. I would really also say to add on that to have numbers, as how Omaro said, that in order not just investors to just keep in money in advance, but as well investors want to see the revenue that you generated before they keeping in money in advance in your project or your company. So this is where you stand out. You stand out very big, because your project becomes unique, because you had did this before giving the money with the investors or something, and then afterwards you go pitch with the investors real data, because the investors really want to see real data of your project. So not just data that you think if you start this project it's gonna end up like this, but then the data which you actually did before investors keeping in money in your project. So I really think this is really something which would really stand out very big for the investors.
Great, thank you for that. And I now want us to shift our focus to some of the questions that are coming in from our audience. And I want to encourage audience members with questions. Please do type them into the chat and we're going to get round to them. So I want to start with the question on positioning for investment, because that is the subject matter we are currently on. So Gideon Mduma asks, is it an issue of capacity? Has the entrepreneur explored all viable options for them being the first investor to their business? I'm not sure whether that's more of a comment, but does anyone want to speak to the issue of capacity? I think it's already been spoken about when we're doing self-assessments in respect of teams. Do we know exactly what we're innovating around? Do we know our numbers? Have we done our research? But does anyone else have anything to add?
Maybe just to add on to that, I think that the common misconception is that when you're starting a business as an entrepreneur or as a startup founder, very glorious title, right? You must take the lion's share of the risk because you intend to keep the lion's share of the profit, But nobody tells you that you also will keep the lion's share of the loss if it doesn't work, right? So if you want to position yourself for investment, you must also be honest, right? And saying that, look, I have 50 million shillings, okay? I could start this business. I know I work very hard. Would I be comfortable in the event that there is an imminent risk of failure? Will I recover? Or will I be completely, disrupted, physically, emotionally, everything included, right? Because if that's the case, then I probably would want to apply a fail-safe and then go to immediate friends and family, or people close by. Because I think the definition of angel investment is also as well as far as application and relevance to African context, and our country specific, grandiozed, okay? Because a person would imagine an angel investor to be a person coming from up there somewhere, If you can convince your church circles to give you some money to do your business, that is an angel investment as well, So I think, a good part of doing business as far as investment is concerned has to come from a good and pure sense of honesty as the likelihood of either the business succeeding or failing before taking on the risk.
That's an excellent point. We shouldn't be expecting manna from heaven or some kind of a miracle that happens out of nowhere. Great point. Maro, do you have anything to add on the issue of capacity?
Well, I think just to expand on what Alfred just touched on, especially in terms of giving up equity, and there's always a question of would you rather have 100% of a rabbit or 10% of an elephant, and I think the issue is very complex, and that is why I posed the question of who is this entrepreneur, and historically, as a country, you come from socialism, and, entrepreneurship was for people who say school is not for me, or you're a failure in education, you go into entrepreneurship. That's historically, that's how it worked. So, and also entrepreneurs need to understand, why are you starting this business? If you're operating or you've grown up in developed economies, you have, people to look up to. You say, I want to start this company because, I want to be a billionaire, or I want to solve a problem, but at the same time, become a billionaire. So you have that vision, those big aspirations. But also to touch on another area is, we need to differentiate between, necessity entrepreneurs and opportunity entrepreneurs. Someone who says, I'm going to quit my job because I'm tired of being employed. I'm going to set up, a salon, to generate recurring revenue for me and my family. It's very different. You can't go to that guy and say, give up equity. It's for them. It's their business. And so that's why we need to really differentiate these types of entrepreneurs. So yeah, maybe if I can, those are my two, cents. Back to you, Amelia.
Thank you. You always contribute with a bit of wit. I'm still ruminating around this issue of, do you want 100% of a rabbit or 10% of an elephant? Thank you. George, your thoughts on capacity?
To be honest, Emily, I think they said it all of it. Yeah.
Okay, great. So now we have a very specific question. It's been directed to Mauro, but I want to hear everyone's perspective. So George, I'm going to start with you, and then I'll go to Alfred. What are some of the exit strategies that are available for angel investors?
Well, investors really doesn't really matter as what kind of business or kind of industry the project is in, but actually it really depends on actually the full project, like in terms of the teams and in terms of the skills of the project, and as well what's the vision actually of this specific project. So it really does not really matter how big or what industry you're in, but actually it really matters on what kind of what's your vision of this project. Yeah.
Great. So as a lawyer, I love your response. It depends. Alfred, more on it depends on what?
Okay, at least from a private equity standpoint or venture capital angel investment standpoint, and with the assumption, practical assumption that capital is allocated and a premium, a very much more rewarding premium is expected from it, right? Because in a beautiful country of Tanzania, we have risk-free almost investments such as the government bond, which will give you a 15%. I think Mauro will tell you all about that, meaning that at any one point, an individual can park their capital over there, and then twice a year, they can get a return, sizable equal to 15% of their capital. So an angel investor, a private equity venture capital investor would be looking at, first of all, making a sizable return, right? So if you're not giving me at least a multiple 15%, which is risk-free at every year, I think I'm not interested. But then again, to the question, what does an exit strategy for an angel investor look like, right? So I think the textbook definition will have you that private equity or private businesses as investments tend to be ones that have a very long tail up until a person is able to exit as an investor, right? As opposed to your alternative investments such as your equity market and this and that, where you can actually liquidate your position and exit immediately after a few months and so forth and so forth. That feature isn't there for private businesses, right? So the only way for an investor to exit is what we call a liquidity event, right? So this is an event whereby either the company gets bought out, meaning acquired, the company goes public either by IPO or whatever method. There's, nowadays there's something called SPACs, but this is too advanced in some of these markets, right? So, those two ways, companies, investors will be able to exit and therefore claw back a premium on their capital, right? But there are also gentlemanly or gentlewomanly agreements that are tailored specific to businesses, right? So I and George and Maro decided to form a new company together, and the business is doing well. The first year we make, hypothetically we make 100 million shillings, and it's looking that it's going to be the case that every year we'll be growing at 40%, right? But then it happens for whatever reason, I'm just tired or preoccupied and I want to exit, right? I'm an investor and a founding member of the company, so I can just ask, George and Mara, hey guys, can you dilute me? Can you buy me out? And I think that's part of, corporate governance. These are the things that need to be in place, in the beginning, as this, partnership is being formulated, right? So that is another way in which, an investor can exit. So you have to be specific and also tailor make your approach as far as investment. It is not plain black and white. Some companies you will never, ever, ever exit because the founder CEO does not want you to have a liquidity event of any kind. I think a good example of that, which has been very public, has been in my last formal job, Uber, right? The founder CEO did not want the company to ever go public, or employees and senior management to ever, liquidate their shares. Well, we all know what happened after that. I won't get into too much, but safe to say that the board and everybody else, investors had their way, and things changed. I think I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Alfred. One of the things you speak about is the liquidity event, and I think that is the culprit for why everyone is running towards entrepreneurship. Maro, over to you on exit strategies.
Thank you, Emilia. I think Alfred here touched on two possible exit strategies. One is the IPO. The other one is the M&A option. Just to add on top of those two, there's an option of secondary trade, where the exiting angel investor can actually sell to another angel investor, or probably a VC or a PE firm. I've never heard of such a transaction taking place in Tanzania, but that is also another option. But another option is as well is a share back. There could be a share back. The investor and the founding team can agree that I'm going to come in, but I'm going to exit at 10x. We have to grow this company in the next 5 years. So the company will have to buy back its own shares at a premium. So that is another option. But just to come back to the option of IPO, I think currently as a country, I think we're making so much progress. If you're following up with the Resum Stock Exchange, which over a number of years has really been targeting growth companies. It has been more of a solution for state-owned enterprises who want to privatize. Some years back, they started a new segment, which is called the Enterprise Growth Market, which basically has very, very good criteria in terms you don't need to have a track record, you don't need to have been profitable, you don't need to have operated for the past 3 years, you don't need to offload at least 25%, you can only offload 10%. And in addition to those efforts, they recently started a non-trading segment. It's called Endelezo. They launched it some few months ago, where if you're a private company, you can actually put your company to become visible, so that people start learning about who you are. So by the time that you want to exit, people already have information about your company. They can see your strategy, they can see your financial statements. And I think that has been very, very powerful recently. And just to add, they also have an accelerator program, which I think is key for any angel investor to agree from the outset that, if I'm going to come in, eventually I need to exit, and I don't want to have problems when it comes to exiting. So, if I'm going to come in, these are my conditions. First of all, your company has to go through this program. It's called DIP, DSC Enterprise Accelerator Program, where, these founding members can have access to different types of consultants in terms of lawyers, tax guys, business consultants, even investment readiness companies. So they go through that program of about 2-3 months, and then, make sure that after they graduate, they go on and list. So at least by the time, when it comes to doing an IPO, it's easy for the angel investor to exit. And there's also, people need to understand, to be listed, you don't need to do an IPO. As you're continuing, you can list the company as long as, for EGM, you just need 200 shareholders. You can list the company. People can see how your company is trading. So when it comes to doing an IPO, it will become, much easier or convenient for, the angel investor to exit. Back to you, Emilia.
Thank you, Mara. You've really drilled down on some specifics. For those who aren't familiar with the acronyms, an IPO is the initial public offering. M&A, we're looking at mergers and acquisitions. So I really loved how you have delved very specifically into what a liquidation or a liquidity event can look like. I like what you've introduced in terms of conditions, this accelerator type of program that entrepreneurs need to consider, including in their strategy, that really ensures that the angel investor exits, not only exits, but also exits with a return. I think that's innovative. I love that we are looking at that and that the DSC is also looking at that in terms of enterprise growth market approaches. I also like that you have introduced this aspect of being able to list without the initial public offering if you have at least 200 shareholders. Great insights, very specific, practical, as a point of departure. I would love to be able to hear on the point that Pam has raised. You can pick which one you want to respond to, and a point that was raised before. The first point that was raised before spoke about why Tanzania isn't as attractive, perhaps as other markets. And I spoke about in my introduction that there are smaller markets, smaller economies than Tanzania that are attracting more angel investments than Tanzania is. I would love to hear your perspective on what needs to change or what are we not doing well? Because this, I think, will bolster some of the recommendations that came out of the first panel, potentially. Then Pam comes back to gets us to reimagine how we define an angel investor. She likes Alfred's perspective on the fact that we have angel investors around us. Is this enough? Should we be happy with that status quo? Should the WBAF Tanzania country office close up shop and say, well, it's already happening? I'd love to hear your perspectives on these two angles. What can Tanzania do? Should we be happy with the status quo as points of departures? I see George has dropped off. So let's start with Alfred and end with Mauro for your parting shots.
Thank you, Emilia. I would probably like to say this, and I'd accompany it by one of the sayings that you put to reinforce points, strongs in conversation. There's this one which is always my favorite that says, the same boiling water that softens potatoes hardens eggs, right? This is very relevant because a culture will also eat strategy for breakfast. Now, I'm speaking this because I happen to be also a Tanzanian, right? I have gone through the life cycle of an entrepreneur, employee, entrepreneur, a private equity angel investor, right? In the same country. Sure, you can, say that, potentially there could be elements of, privilege and this and that. But I think if I am to share something more relevant, as to why Tanzania happens to be forgotten as far as angel investment is concerned. To put numbers in perspective, in 2020, it is estimated that about $2 billion circa has been allocated as venture capital in Africa. It isn't substantial, but quick maths, assuming that there's 54 countries in Africa, you have about 34 to $35 million per country from venture capitalists, and a good portion of that is between Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and Kenya. So four countries, and why Tanzania is not there, I think is because of two main things, right? One, one says that, you have to build locally, but you have to think globally, right? The second, and I think this one I'll probably spend a bit of a minute because I know we're short of time, right? But it says like, you shouldn't solve problems, but you should focus on bright spots. I think this one I'll go into a little bit of detail. And I like the idea of bright spot because unfortunately in our culture, we like to reinvent wheels and processes, right? But bright spots in the sense that if I am an entrepreneur, right, and I look at raising capital, I look at raising venture funds, and I know for a fact that there's data that says that $2 billion is going to 4 or 5 countries in the entire continent. What are those people doing? So sure, you can say that, okay, government policy is stifling in our country in Tanzania, taxes are high, but really, have you really done a benchmark comparison to compare Tanzania and Nigeria, right? Just looking at the foreign exchange exposure, the Tanzanian shilling, as far as an investor point of view, has been pretty stagnant for a very long period of time. Nigeria in comparison, the Naira versus the dollar fluctuates 30–40% spread, So it's clear that it's not the issue of government, but it's clear that there is something else that they're doing that you are not doing, right? And this is not as a nation alone, but this is as individually as an entrepreneur. And I think some of those things include, but not limited to, the fact that they put themselves out there in the world, right? So there's definitely a lot of platforms that entrepreneurs, regardless of where you are, you put yourself in the world. You have Y Combinator, you have AngelList, you have all these platforms that are open to literally anyone. But the mere fact that the people that want it tend to be obviously skewed to those countries that get the money should actually tell us that here in Tanzania, we need to have a bright spot approach towards raising capital and therefore, moving on with life.
Thank you, Alfred. A bright spot approach towards raising capital, thinking locally, building globally, I believe. And I think you're right. I think some of our counterparts on the continent are definitely occupying spaces where we are never seen. And this should be a good answer to the person who posed it earlier. Unfortunately, I don't remember who it was. It could have been Emmanuel, but let's also make sure we're occupying spaces internationally and being seen. Thank you for that. Maro, I want to give you an opportunity for a parting shot, but I saw a new question. So you're also free to consider this with your parting shot. There's a question around honesty with financials. Apparently, perhaps it's Tanzanian entrepreneurs are feeling that they need to be a little deceptive with their financials. Is there a reason for this? Something you can consider. You don't have to respond to because it only just came in. But the other aspect that wasn't touched upon was Pam's question around this definition around angel investments. Should we remain with the status quo? Should we keep pace with the developments around angel investments? That's another thing you can consider.
Thank you. I know we understand with limited time. First of all, I like the idea that Alfred talked about this issue of who an angel investor is. We shouldn't be a community that's copies and pastes. Let's learn to adopt. What is it that works for us? What is it that does not work for us? recently we were doing some campaign, and we said, you can be an investor just by buying 10 shares at DSE. And people didn't believe us. They said, no, just buy 10 shares. Voila, you are an investor. So, angel investor in US or UK could be someone who is accredited, has to be a high net worth individual, but we have to put, into our own context. And this brings me to this issue of philanthropy. There's now something new coming up. It's called venture philanthropy. You have these venture philanthropists who are investing in startups, and the aspect of philanthropy, I think, we're very philanthropic. Look around us, you're always contributing to, there's a funeral, someone is at a hospital, there's a wedding. What if we could just, create an industry out of that? If you're contributing 200, 400,000 shillings for a wedding, I mean, what if we could do some crowdfunding and just contribute at least 50, 100,000 to these startups? So I really like the idea that, Alfred pointed out. And the issue of culture as well. Let's call a spade a spade. We have a serious problem when it comes to culture. Someone, and I do hate the fact that, we have this new type of entrepreneurs. They just want grants. They get the grant off, they disappear. You might think you're doing yourself a favor, but you're killing the industry. And we need to stop these awardpreneurs. These days you have, every now and then, every entrepreneur receives an award. The culture with Kenya and even Uganda and Rwanda is different. Build your competitiveness. Learn from, what others are doing. We have to change. We have to transform as a society. And to attend to another question is, why is Tanzania probably not an attractive investment destination? And it goes back to macro issues. It's not just about, opportunities being around here. The panel that came before us touched on the issues of policy. But I'm happy that the government just rolled out the financial sector development master plan, the 10-year master plan. And in that, there are areas in the banking, the insurance, the payment, as well as the capital markets. And, just the other day, we were telling the regulator that, we need to start talking about the International Finance Center. We need to bring these guys here. We're now talking about having the regulatory framework for VCs and PEs. How can you structure a PE as a limited company? You need to structure it as a limited partnership. So the regulatory framework really inhibits the growth of this ecosystem. I mean, there's a lot that we need to touch on, but I think those are the key ones. But in terms of the financials, I don't know, maybe, you might think you're doing, again, yourself a favor that you're hiding from TRA, but you get to a point where you have to grow. I remember that one panelist said, was a keynote speaker, said, there's gonna be due diligence. They will drill down, to the deepest point, and, they will come up with these issues. And, if it is tax that is really inhibiting the growth of our startups, then I think, we come back again to the policy. I think we now have Tanzania Startup Association. It's really pushing for the Startup Act. I hope things will go through this time. So above all, let's have hope. We're a society that is currently transforming, and I hope it won't take us so long. So yeah, over to you, Emilia.
Thank you both for those insightful parting shots, for the contributions you've made throughout this particular panel. We are indeed out of time, so I'm not even going to summarize what you've said. You've both said it so eloquently, you've articulated clearly, and I hope that everybody who has been with us has enjoyed the contributions of Dr. Alfred Nsemo, Maro Patrick Kohi, and George Solomon. Thank you so much to our panelists for your insights, your contributions, and for being here. Thank you very much. At this point, we have come to the end of our second panel, and I would wish to also thank once again Dr. Lunogelo, who's still with us, and Dale Sabokwigina, and I would wish to invite Madam Chair of WBAF Tanzania, to officially bring us to a close. Over to you, Tuti Mwambenja.
Thank you very much, Ms. Amelia. I am very, very, very honored. Both sessions have been very informative. The insights that has been shared by all panelists, both from the first panel and the second, have been beyond my expectation. As a chair, I have learned quite a lot in terms of the practical steps that a startup can take in attracting angel investment, but also navigating at where the policies are in Tanzania and what room we have to grow and to change. Being a startup myself, one of my main takeaway point is that I would like other startups to think about, or entrepreneurs to think about. As Maro said, would you rather have 100% of a rabbit or 10% of an elephant? And in terms of the policies that need to be put in place, we've seen that Tanzania still has a lot of room to grow, and we are hoping that in collaboration with other stakeholders like Tanzania Private Sector Foundation and incubators such as Kiota and Costec, that both the angel investing ecosystem and the entrepreneur ecosystem can collaborate in advancing the topic of angel investment in Tanzania, so that we can move it away from friends and family into a broader market, where Andrew talked about, where we can have an actual center or information center that international angel investors coming to Tanzania can go to and have information on startups that are ready for investment. And also the local angel investors can be encouraged to invest in local startups or entrepreneurs in Tanzania. To round off, I would like to thank everybody, keynote speakers, the moderator, Miss Amelia, all our panels for taking the time to share your expertise and information on the topic of angel investment. And I really hope that this will be the beginning of together transforming the culture of Tanzania and making making room for local angel investors, and also allowing entrepreneurs in Tanzania to realize their dreams, but also gauge where they are exactly. Do they need angel investment? Are they ready for angel investment? If they're not, where can they access support from the accelerators and incubators, that they can access support, so that when the angel investment or angel investors approach them, or they approach them, they are ready for such an investment. Lastly, in terms of the current angel investing habits that we have, one of the courses we offer here at WBAF is the angel investing course. So all these families and friends that are already investing in entrepreneurs or startups that are just providing money and they don't understand exactly how to go about it, such courses are available through WBAF. So we provide both support for angel investors or those that are wanting or to be angel investors, but also for entrepreneurs. So we hope that to be the link between these two ecosystems. Once again, thank you for participating. Thank you for your time. The WBAF office is open. We're available at the 19th floor Millennium Towers. Please feel free to contact us. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tuti.
Thank you so much.